Now, when I first discovered great beer in '87, it was Anchorstein. God bless those people, good people. And it was quite epiphanous to me. It's like, wow, I didn't know beer could be like that. And I had two major reactions. One was, of course, joy. Like, wow, beer can taste like this, and this is so good. And you know, I'd always been a beer lover, but I would have never imagined the term beer enthusiast. That wouldn't have made sense to me until that moment. And then the other side of my reaction was, honestly, I was pissed off. I was angry. Why? Because I felt that all the previous years of my beer drinking age had been stolen from me, had been ripped away from me, because I really honestly felt that I'd been lied to. I felt like I'd been misled. And I'm one of those personalities, definitely. I don't like to be misled. I want the truth. I want it to be easy to understand and freely shareable. And you know, I don't believe in the paying no attention to the man behind the curtain style of doing business. So, well, anyways, so, you know, I've been led to believe via television and just, you know, every other potential source of conversation about beer, that beer was that stuff that you see on television, and that was the beginning and the end. And it would just matter what brand it was. So, as my beer journey went on, and then, you know, up to when I ran into Steve at that class, I'd been doing a lot of traveling to just about any brewery I could find and find my way to, beer festivals, and also some beer industry events or beer, the formal side of the beer world, such as the sensory evaluation of beer class. And so I'd also been doing some home brewing with some friends, but I was new in that curve. And so when Steve and I hooked up and we began doing some home brewing together, Steve had been home brewing about 7 years by that time, and he was a very accomplished home brewer, extremely knowledgeable. So I naturally fell into the role of assistant homebrew lackey, which meant I was the guy doing the sanitizing. Joyous work that it is. And so after a number of years, I sort of analogize it to, you know, both Steve and I, we hiked up to the mountain to the edge of the cliff and the stepping over the cliff would be actually starting the brewery. We walked up to that edge, we hiked up to it through our own individual and beer journeys and then together. And then we walked along that edge for a couple of years. Going, I don't know, really, should we? I want to, you know, that kind of thing. And eventually, in 1995, we said, that's it. We're going to step over the edge of the cliff. I moved from Los Angeles down to San Diego because I was enamored with San Diego and I thought it would be a great place to start a brewery. And I was able to talk Steve he was living at that time in Portland, Oregon. I was able to talk him down. And we started searching for a warehouse. We found it in San Marcos. And that's where we put our first brewery in. Officially leased it February 1, 1996, and sold our first keg after going through many months of building the brewery and going through all of that. Released our first keg July 26, 1996. We sold it to that very first keg to Vince Marcellia, well known for being the co-owner of Pizza Port chain, what's now a small chain. It was a single location at that time in Solana Beach, which is part of San Diego County. Over the last 15 years now that we've been in existence, we have been actually the fastest growing brewery in the United States on a year-over-year annual percentage growth basis. And I think perhaps one of the interesting things about that is that we have never advertised, which is not terribly unusual for small breweries. Most small breweries probably don't advertise. And we've also never discounted our beer, which is a little bit less usual. Thank you very much. Oh, bring her beer. Oh, yes, it is. So, and we also quickly developed a reputation, I think deserved the reputation that we earned for ourselves, of brewing bigger, bolder, stronger, more unique styles of beer than were commonly available. You know, simultaneously at the other end of the country, we didn't know about each other at that time. You know, Sam was doing that in his own way, you know, and he was brewing quite unique beers. So we released Stone Pale Ale as our very first beer in 1996. released Stone Smoke Porter, and initially as Winter Stone. It was a seasonal, it was our one and only ever seasonal that winter, and we went away for about a month or so that spring until we just brought it back permanently because we really liked the beer. As I've often said, it was my mom's favorite, so we had to make it full time. And so now we get to do some special versions from time to time, including this. This is not a full-time production version, the Stone Smoke Porter with vanilla bean. We use whole vanilla beans. Break them up, of course, before we put them into the beer to really get that great vanilla character. So I'll pause for a second and say cheers to everybody. In case you didn't know, we are looking to open and operate our own brewery in Europe. And it's really quite amusing, the reaction I get from people when I get in a conversation done and I'm going to be planning on opening a brewery. And you get this look. It's like, you can see behind their eyes, you can see they're thinking, it doesn't look that stupid. But what he said was about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He wants to do what? He wants to, an American wants to come over to Europe and brew, and they just can't get their heads wrapped around it. Now frankly, people like you, who are writers and in the beer industry in one way or another, and they know the true state of things, their reaction is more about, well, hallelujah, and when are you going to do it? And hurry the hell up. But the typical person on the street has no idea whatsoever. Maybe like the typical person on the street in the United States, but I think more so, because now in the United States we are in a solid swing, going in the direction that we're going for great craft beer. And even the people that still are, haven't converted their palates and still aren't on our side of the equation, they know we exist. They know that we're getting a lot of attention, and the degrees of separation are becoming fewer and fewer. Maybe there's probably only 1 or 2 degrees of separation between them and a craft beer enthusiast, which is wonderful. So it's very exciting times, and I'm proud to be part of this changing scene. I very much view ourselves as part of the overall changing scene on a food and drink basis. Coffees, of course, have gone through quite a transformation over a couple of decades. Wine was one of the very first things that started in the 70s, that transformation from commodity to specialty. And I've heard it said, and did you know this was the #1 selling wine in the United States in 1970? Ripple. It's an absurd thought today. And so it's my goal that a overly commoditized beer, being the #1 selling beer in the United States, someday becomes a confusing thought to us. Where people get, what? Huh? Really? And they drink freeze-dried, vacuum-packed coffee? No, come on. When they got this as a choice, and fluffy white bread, and pre-wrapped processed cheese slices, that's what you guys ate? And that's all those things of the past. I feel like this is not just a fight by the craft brewers, but it's a fight in all food and drink and the artisanal versus the commodity side. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I've just said to myself, I want to be a part of the solution. And I'll get a little feisty and dare I say, outright angry from time to time about this. Because I think it's insulting. I go into, I see some of the things that are on the shelves, and I'm insulted by it. We balance it out, we weigh it out these days, is the amount of noise we hear from the streets, putting our ear to the ground and the rumbling. And frankly, there was a lot of rumbling coming from Minnesota. And it was very good rumbling. It was, sometimes delivered with a smile, and sometimes delivered with a shaking fist. How come you're not here already? And I took both versions as a very positive thing and hugely flattering. So we heard a lot of rumbling. We heard from beer enthusiasts. We heard from the likes of you guys. Thank you very, very, very much. You can consider yourselves part of the process that helped bring us here, and I'm very thankful for it. And retailers and wholesalers. So with this great rumbling that we heard, we didn't make the decision. The decision was made for us. Terrific. I definitely have had a chance to try some of your local beers because I made a point of it. You know, when I travel, hey, you know, sure, I get a chance to try a lot of special stone stuff that I don't normally get access to because we squirrel it away and save it and make it up special for events like this. But I still tend to focus more on local beers, so I've gotten to enjoy some Surly during this trip, which, you know, old fan favorites. And I've known Omar and Todd now for a number of years, and Todd and his wife love coming to San Diego, so I've seen them out there a few times, and consider them friends. I got to try some Sweet Child Divine last night, and I really enjoyed that pint. And I had a pint of the special Summit, which is called, I forgot again, Gold Sovereign Ale, which was delicious. Hey, you know, when we started in 1996, what's the key difference between today? The average quality and character and uniqueness of craft beer then versus now. There was some amazing craft beers and some very unique craft beers being brewed, but the overall tone and quality and just the random, pour me a pint of that or I'm going to pull this off the shelf and take it home. The overall percentage of great experiences that you could expect is hugely different. Back in the middle of the 90s, in 1996 when we opened and when the bubble burst for craft beer, we don't know, craft beer was going from about late 80s to 95 at a clip between 25 to 45% a year as an industry. These, you know, those are growth rates that make what, you know, this wonderful growth rate of, you know, 7 to 11% growth look, you know, tame. And then it burst in 1996, and I point my finger at the public becoming disengaged because you will try and you'll try and maybe you'll try again, and then you know what? If you're going to have consistently poor experiences, you got to stop trying. I'm open.